Happy Sunday, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today, we're coming to you with another podcast within a podcast. We call this podcast within a podcast, in, not of.
In, not of.
In and not of.
In, not of.
Yeah, with an echo and everything. Secrets of the universe. And it's a subset of rules for retrogrades. And I got my buddy Boss here with me. What's up, man?
How's it going, Tim?
Good, because we've been hanging out with the fams all weekend. It's funny when you do a podcast and sometimes you get caught talking to the dude like an hour before on Skype or on Zoom. And then when you roll tape, they're like, what's up, man? It's good to see you. Yeah, we've been hanging out all weekend. So it's good. This is the kind of fellowship, as some of the Novus Ordo Catholic folks call it, the good ones call it fellowshipping. I don't call it that. I just call it hanging out with my buddy and his family, and we've been having a good time. But we began talking more seriously about the motu proprio, and even though on in, not of, we focus on how things hit household patriarchs, that is to say. We were talking about the havoc that's truly been wreaked by the motu proprio. We don't have to tell you guys. And I was just saying, look, 1 + 2 is 3. We need a Vatican III that will rectify, give gloss, reconcile, not rectify, let's say reconcile and give gloss to some important points in Vatican I and Vatican II, right? And what's your initial take on that? You think it's likely to happen?
I just right before we were going live, Joe, you call it, was it SSPX Joe? Is that what you call him?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, let's do a Vatican III, just not with these bishops. And I was like, yeah, I mean, fair. That's kind of what I'm worried about, is they would do that, call Vatican III. And then it's 3/4 of people that Pope Francis has appointed. So that's my initial reaction. Absolutely. But maybe not now. I don't know what you feel about that, but
I mean, well, that's the perfect response, is like, look, why should we even talk about a Vatican III when, all of the consistories of cardinals that Francis has held, whereby he's used his power to elevate people that'll just be Francis men after he dies, which might be a moment that's coming soon. Here's the answer. Here's why I want to help people to organize their thoughts. Because, as I've been telling trads since the days of TNT, since late 2018, trads have more issues with Vatican I than with Vatican II. Now, I understand they think they have big time issues with Vatican II, and there are some issues that need addressing there, which should also be addressed by Vatican III. I have 6 points that Vatican III ought to address. But the big one, which has become utterly relevant or maybe just utterly visible, I think it's always been relevant, in the last 2.5 weeks since the motu proprio, Traditionis Custodes, is Pastor Aeternus, the document from Vatican I, which needs a gloss. And Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Brandmuller, the two remaining dubia cardinals who still survive, they seem to be saying some things which line up nicely with some of the folks, on SSPX Joe, my buddy, on his side of things. And even though Burke and Brandmuller agree with the church, the rest of the church, about the status of SSPX. So we're not talking about SSPX this show. It's just there's clearly some gloss that's needed on Vatican I, and I think it's 2/3 of the difficulty here, even if it's not right now. I just want people to know this is what you ought to hope for. That way, when your hopes are dashed, you can know you can know why they're dashed, right?
It's really painful, but I know why. It's so much better now.
Yeah. I can feel my whole body's in pain, but I can name the organs that are like exploded.
Yeah, exactly.
If I got bombed in a car or something in Afghanistan, like I can know what organs need repair, but there's not a doctor there, so they're just aching badly. I can name them all. It's 25 different things. In this case, it's 6 things.
Lavender oil. Just rub some lavender oil on
it. No, it's blueberries. All you do, you take a soldier who's missing a leg and natural anti-inflammatory.
I thought it was like lavender on a barefoot, and then you put the socks over those, is what I was.
Sleep with your socks on, people, with a little lavender oil, and that stump of a leg will just heal right up. Don't really do that.
Do not use this show for medical advice.
Please, no.
Ever. For legal purposes, we are not giving out medical advice. Although compared to the AMA, we're probably doing better right now.
Wait, what did the AMA tweet out yesterday?
We should focus on what we're doing, but they basically just said sex should be removed from public
Legal
birth.
documentation.
Legal documentations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do you agree with that or disagree?
Is that a question?
Is that a serious question?
I can't, man. We should focus on this because that's just absurd.
Well, I like having you as consigliere, but for the show, because you're right. Do not listen to my medical advice. I am not an MD.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are tuning in every time you're on, and they're just like, I know this week he's going to cover what happens if I'm blowed up in Iraq.
What do I do about this cold?
Yeah. Exactly.
What do I do about these sniffles? Are they deadly? If you listen to the experts on the Delta strain, sniffles are deadly. But yeah.
People
So
are saying this is the most Italian conversation.
a couple of paisani.
The grandmothers are always doing that.
Yeah.
Here's half a potato. Just leave this in the closet with the air on, and it'll fix everything. It's like, what?
No, Italians will also tell you, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, then we're going to get to Vatican III, which is not happening, by the way. We're going to get to Vatican III right after. Eat a lot of garlic, and that'll heal anything, right? Sore throat. Whatever. That actually does heal sore throat. It'll heal a cough, but you have to ingest it the wrong way. You got to take it down the wrong pipe for it to heal a cough. Anyway.
Wow.
And that's not true either. But I mean, I think you're giving voice, boss, to the real concern that people are going to have when they're like, cool, Vatican III, I'm sure this stuff will be pretty good. Even the people that disagree with me about some details, like, yeah, great. With Francis's consistories, how is this ever going to happen? You asked me this over breakfast, and I was like, well, I'm not saying it will. Right? I mean,
true.
Does that capture it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just in a crazy situation where we're discussing all these things in the fallout, and we're like, we need certain things to happen, but when's the right time? What's the fallout from it? And then, of course, it's going to need like a slamming title too, like Vatican II, Electric Boogaloo, and then like Vatican III. What was Rocky III? Did it have like a subtitle for it?
I don't know. Fought Clubber Lang, taken down Clubber, the modernists in the church, and enforcement of the steel will of the American church. How about that?
That's very long title. We'll have to work on that.
Yeah. But so here's the other thing. Other quick Prolagomina to my Vatican III druthers, if you will. I mean, like a lot of weeks, because I don't have a TLM near me, a lot of weeks we'll travel to you, and we'll have breakfast with your family in New Orleans, and we'll go to the TLM at St. Pat's there, and that's cool.
Right.
You have that every week. On the lazy weeks, I'm just at the Novus Ordo here. I won't say which parish because it's abysmal. And the reason I'm not saying is not for anonymity, but rather because of ubiquity. It doesn't matter what parish I go to in town. It's all going to be abysmal.
It's the average. Let's just be honest. It's the average Novus Ordo parish in the country right now.
Of course. It's or 5 years ago or 25 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you don't even have to be specific, because it's everybody. It's like Susan, right? That was the whole idea. Is it represented
it's every man,
every woman.
It's every woman. Every parish woman.
Every parish woman.
But I mean, so this today, because of a miscommunication I had with FSSP friend of mine, that we're going to do a private mass. I had a private mass done here by a friend of mine who's in Norbertine on Friday. I thought we were having one done Sunday. It turns out it's Tuesday. I'm just bad at looking at dates. To me, August the 3rd looks like August the 1st. So we wound up at the Novus Ordo, and of course it was abysmal. And so we ended up having this. Then we went to the Cracker Barrel with all the other crackers, and we ended up at the Cracker Barrel having this discussion about Vatican III, and I was just like, we should go live on this. I think it'll make people feel fuzzy inside to hear this is what could be done. We don't have to forget about Vatican II. We don't have to forget about Vatican I. We have to have another ecumenical council to gloss it over. And like you were talking about, you were surprised when there are clusters of ecumenical councils over the space of 150 years. And I was like, oh, this can happen a lot, where you have 3 or 4 over the space of 150 years.
Well, I think the Lateran councils were like that when you read about them. Like Lateran I was, as far as I know, it wasn't addressing any specific heresies per se. It was one of those situations where there were specific things they wanted to address, but it was ecumenical, I guess, in the sense. And of course, that was argued about for a couple hundred years after the fact, if it was going to be accepted or not as an actual council. And so, yeah, that was one of those things I started reading about, because everyone says that, oh yeah, there's other councils. And then some people, there's that There's that false saying out there that there wasn't. Vatican II was unique in that it, wasn't addressing anything specifically. It was the modern world, but it has happened before. So that's kind of one thing that we were talking about also. And it was really easy to just Google it and find that out.
Yeah, the Laterans 1, 2, and 3 were all strictly pastoral councils, and they're ecumenical. Ecumenical just means it represents all the bishops in the world. It's not regional, the way Francis's wacky synodal regional synods have been, and they've been nothing but trouble. And they've been intended to be universal in import, both the Amazon one and the 2 family ones. But that's we already know that about Francis. He's bad. He uses the particular for the universal for the particular. Bada bing, bada boom. And just got like 3 times more Italian in here. There you go. But yes, ecumenical does not mean that it's a council that only anathematizes things or includes dogmatic definitions. It means all the bishops are involved. Vatican II, it means, at the very least, it's the authentic magisterium in operatio, which we've had 21 times. Now, I would start out by, so I'm going to get to the 6 points that I think, I'm just going to run them by you because we didn't get this specific over 11 screaming children at breakfast at the Cracker Barrel with all the other crackers. And so I'll say this one, point number 6, I want to go through and do anathemas, disciplinary anathemas for all who refuse. That's what I would include here. And I think people are actually going to like that a lot, but I'll get to that after I say what the council would entail. But you just let me bounce these thoughts off of you. And more seriously, tell me, how would this work out for a guy that pretty much every week is just at the TLM, a little more often than I'm able to go, slightly more often. And you just tell me, from the kind of man on the street, raising his family, not wanting to scandalize them with the kind of funny business we just saw today.
The comments were unbelievable from my children who are not old enough to even realize it. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, what were some of them? Out of the mouths of babes, you get truth, Jesus says. So what they were like, the lady's screeching.
Yeah, right? my daughter said, why is this screeching? What is this? Like, why? That was the first thing that came out. And then the second thing was, this seems wrong. What's wrong with this? There's something different that's wrong. And I just said, oh, it's a different area, and there's protocols in place because of people that are scared of what's on the news every day. And I didn't even know what to say. Thankfully, they're still young enough that I can dismiss it pretty easily. But yeah, just the comments were unbelievable within the first, I don't even know, 3 minutes or less. Yeah.
Hey, look, I was going at it with a friendly going at it, I think on Twitter right after the Mochi came out. I think it was Eric Salmons, and he was defending the proposition, the new mass and the old mass, they're different religions. I'm like, well, they're not actually. I mean, you could say the same thing with any of the 20 something Eastern rites. They feel rites do not make, disparity or alterity in ritual, in rite, does not a different religion make. But it feels like it. We can admit that. We fully do admit that, right? It feels like a way different equipoise for the Eucharist with regard to the Eucharist. Right. And that's clear when you have this warbly voiced goof woman singing Taste and See. Like, how does she do it, Steph? It's like, do you sing Happy Birthday this way?
It's like that old, like on the old Snow White video from Disney, where it's like every time she sings, it's like, ooh.
Yeah. It's operatic, but not at the talent level. Right, somebody who can sing opera.
Not talent, yeah, just someone that has no talent, but it's like, okay, use
an untrained opera voice.
Shit tons of vibrato. Just that doesn't make a good singing, and they only do it at the Novus Ordo.
That's beautiful.
Oh, okay.
No,
sorry.
I'm kidding.
No. You said it. All right, he said it.
It's so bad. It's really just awful.
Boss, it's gay.
But it's the same thing. Like when people, okay, I like opera. Okay, I know everybody's but like when you try to listen to opera in any other language and like Italian, it just sounds stupid.
Yeah,
like opera in English is just disgusting.
That's the Novus Ordo, basically.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Opera in English without good singers.
Yeah,
with crummy singers.
That's even better. Because even if you have a good singer, you can still tell the language itself doesn't lend well to the way that the music's written.
Right. Yeah, and Taste and See is a crappy song anyway. And every other song I've heard.
Maybe that's the problem. It has to be sung in Latin. Taste and See in Latin by a good singer.
It'd still be bad. Yeah. Okay. So let's table the Vatican II, because the main pressing need. Sorry, trads. I can defend this rather robustly. The motu proprio has made visible, has made plain what I've been telling you since the later days on Taylor Marshall's channel on TNT. I'm like, look, as much as you guys think you're up against Vatican II, it's Vatican I. And now everyone's like, I'm getting messages left and right. Tim, you're right. You're right. It's Vatican I. It specifically Pastor Eternus, paragraphs 2, 8, and 9. And I told you 3 years ago, because I'm quick as anyone. I'm lightning fast to say I was wrong on that. I called it out, and this is the guy that was right. And I'll clear the record. I also am going to tell you, I've called a lot, right? I have to do that because I'm like, I'm wrong some of the time. They tend to be details, small details. I've been right on a lot of stuff. I was one of the first people on the beer bug telling you, I think as far back as February, like this is a psyop, way early. And then I was, publishing against Francis way earlier than anyone I knew. I was trying the first summer he was Pope to publish against him, and I couldn't get my pieces picked up anywhere after his first encyclical. But then they started picking it up. Crisis did in spring of 2014. So I was publishing against him, and now I've been telling you the Vatican I thing. Like trads are up against Pastor Eternus, not contradiction, but tension. I explained that on the other show. Tension is ostensible. Contradiction is a direct loggerheads. So I called that, and I would like to have that out there. Why is Pastor Eternus confusing people? Well, right now, like I say, the best tell for this is that Cardinals Burke and Brandmüller, who I look to pretty much before anyone in the church, basically before anyone in the church, the two living dubia cardinals, they're both defending a sort of SSPX light interpretation of the limited purview of the Pope. And I don't doubt the spirit of what they're saying, because in one way it feels right, that the Pope has purview which falls short of the capacity of abrogation of ancient rites. Now, I really would like to talk to Cardinal Burke about this because he's a big hero of mine. And secondly, because I would like a citation. When there is an ecumenical council with official, it's not just dicta, it's the point of the council, paragraphs 2, 8, and 9 of Pastor Eternus, saying, look, you're anathematized for even saying that the Pope's power is anything less than plenary, which means absolute, or can be fractile in any way. It's anything other than the whole power of the church. Then I'm open to hear where other ecumenical councils at the same level of magisterium or ex cathedra statements, maybe I'm missing some, give gloss to that, which say, but it's whole, but it's not whole. Here's a wink and a nod. I'm just not seeing that. And the motu proprio now is proving it, because even Burke and Brandmüller said, well, the Pope has total power, but not absolute power. What in heaven's name does that mean?
That's the kind of wordplay that we're used to from Pope Francis right now at this point.
Yeah.
Is this the joke is the document's the clearest thing that's been issued, but then there is this ambiguity still in the sense that everybody's interpreting it. There's certain, you can't seem to mix those two words, right? I mean, they have to mean what they mean. You can't define the words in your own terms.
Yeah.
There was confusion with that in the last podcast, or the last show you did, actually. Somebody asked about that, and it was like plenary and total, absolute. Like, those terms are like, they're the same thing basically. So
no, someone said it's plenary but not absolute.
Plenary but not absolute.
Yeah. I got up on my phone and I was like, definition of plenary is absolute. The definition of absolute, probably if I reversed it, it would say plenary. So it's troubling. And literally, I don't blame you guys for thinking there's some stipulation that needs to be made or some nuance which exists under the surface.
Right.
Because we're used to absolute clarity from Burke. No tricks. He's the holiest guy I ever see taught. I mean, he's just every one of my friends who's actually met him is like, he's the holiest guy. It's a living saint, right? And it's not clear with anyone else in the church today that he's just so holy. He has no agenda, right? Which is why I was like, you're kind of saying something similar to what SSPX is saying, but you're saying they're in schism. How, if this is no law at all, this new motu proprio, if it aims to eventually abrogate, if abrogation is ultra vires to the Pope, how does this work? Also, Anthony, you tell me this. Okay, we had trouble with the original rad trads, the Eastern Orthodox, who they didn't like filioque, right? Because the more original,
Yeah.
like edgelord thing to say was not filioque. Who added filioque?
And edgelords back in the day.
The EO were the
They've been
edgelords
around
back
forever, though. Yeah,
They have.
yeah,
No, I mean, they were the original edgelords that were like, we're out. The church can't abrogate anything.
yeah.
Why did they not like filioque and the Son? For those of you who don't speak Latin, they didn't like that
Proceeds from
because
the Father and the Son. Yeah,
Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. It had in the creed, but
Yeah.
then Charlemagne,
And the
who was
Son.
emperor, added and the Son, filioque, hardest form of conjunction. And they're like 4 ways of expressing conjunction in Latin, and that's the tightest. That's the covalent bond
right.
in the Latin language, filioque. And Charlemagne added it. That's kind of weird that it was a layman that added this. So you kind of get like with edgelord radtrads, you always get where they're coming from. The EO are like, we don't like filioque. Now the theology always backed us up, which is always a response to the edgelord radtrads. We're like, no. Everyone understood that the Holy Spirit proceeded not just from the Father, but Father and the Son. They just left it out. Whatever it was, 300, 300 to 400 years before that, at the Council of Nicaea.
Well, we talked to about the leavened bread, right? That was the other thing we talked about.
That's the other EO.
Leavened versus unleavened bread.
Right. Yeah, literally the EOs are mad about the distinction. We used unleavened. Well, it was originally leavened. And they were edgelord radtrads on that too. And those are liturgical practices. Filioque, leavened, unleavened. Those are liturgical practices that were abrogated by the power of the church, the disciplinary power of the church to abrogate, which is consistent with Pastor Aeternus from Vatican I.
Right.
Even an ancient practice going back can be altered, right? What else are we saying? Yeah, think of Pope Victor. I know I keep bringing this up, but it's a strong point. Pope Victor abrogated a liturgical practice that went all the way back to John the Evangelist, and people refusing to obey. They're like, that's an ancient practice. They were probably screaming, this is ultra vires. And he was like, no, it's not, because I'm the Pope. And this is very early on.
I'm the Pope, and that's how this works. So fall in line, or you can go Orthodox or whatever you want to do.
And he was actually going to excommunicate him.
Well, and we've gone through this in history, though, with every situation. There's always a group that says, no, I'm not playing along. And then they do their own thing. So we're not a new territory in that sense. We're just living in it. We can't see it 1,000 years later in certain cases where it's like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense now. It was always professed this way, but there was confusion at the time. Of course there was.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very clear in that sense. Because again, the other thing we discussed was, at what point is there like this magic line that now it's been long enough in our history that we can't touch it?
Right.
That's totally just up in the air for whoever's interpretation, because there's never been like, this is what that means, right?
Right.
Because with the swipe of a pen, the Pope did away with whatever was the mass before the mass of the TLM, basically, that we're used to, right?
It was a bunch of them. It was a bunch of ones it was a more organic change, and I admitted I was wrong.
No, yeah, but absolutely. But those go back. Some of those probably went all the way back to Christ himself. I mean, like, to the early church. So
yes,
what's the magic number? Where are we at when we say, okay, now it's met tradition, now it hasn't? It's just very gray in that area as well.
They'll spit at you 200 years, but here's the thing. One, yeah, the masses that were abrogated by Pius V, as he said, now this is non-abrogable. It's like Ralph Macchio punching Johnny and be like, okay, now we're good. It's you don't get to do that as a pope. Abrogate ancient, bind a future pope after unbinding other future popes. Right. But even think about, you're saying, oh, it's 1,000-year-old practices, so what's up with that? But even my point with Pope Victor, who is going to excommunicate those who wouldn't fall in disciplinary line with his practice that went all the way back to John the Evangelist, that might have been just under 200 years. I think that might even be the basis for that distinction. It was just under 200 years, but how do you get any more ancient? It was John, the beloved apostle, probably the best apostle, right? Even though he's not Peter. And the practice went all the way back to him. Who, if the Pope can abrogate that, he can abrogate anything. Also, taking away the chalice. I mean, the taking away of the chalice is a huge part. That's arguably an elemental part of the Mass, and that was done when we went to basically the conglomerated TLM. Also, what Pius X did to the breviary, which is a liturgical reform, is more gutting even than the Novus Ordo, which neither of us like. Right? He just abolished the breviary. And then, of course, Pius V, who who issued Quo Primum himself, is saying, don't do what I just did.
Right.
You know, that's only on a conspicuous interpretation anyway. But you guys get the point now. We need a clear ruling. I'd like to hear one from Cardinal Burke and Brandmuller after Brandmuller issued his letter late in last week that agreed with Burke, saying that in some sense SSPX is right. It's ultra vires to the Pope to alter a liturgical practice. I'm like, why? I don't get that. No, one does not get that by reading Pastor Aeternus. If so what Vatican II could do for Pastor Aeternus is, I'm like writing an arrow for myself, is it's not contradict.
It's a terrible arrow, dude.
It's ugly.
It's awful.
It's ugly. Some people have
You guys
naturally
should really
pretty
see
arrows.
this.
I'm sidetracking you. Sorry.
It is a truly asymmetrical arrow. But what we need is gloss, and gloss can be delivered ex post. It can be delivered later, and that there's no contradiction. It would alleviate some ostensible tension between Pastor Aeternus, and which sounds like the Pope can do anything, and liturgically popes in the past have basically done
everything. Yeah,
they have.
Anything.
So if you want a little bit of a gloss and say, well, but we don't want him able to do anything, we usually have left that in 2,000 years to the Holy Spirit to be the starch block. But if we want to, formalize a little like constitutional language saying, well, it doesn't actually mean everything, then we could use that. That would be helpful now. And that, I think, is the most important change the Vatican III should lead off with. What do you think about that? Just common sense.
Common sense gun control.
Yeah, common sense gun. Yeah.
So we
what does that mean?
We talked about the Eastern rites too, right? I mean, we talked about a little bit of that at breakfast also, the Eastern rites, and how we like lead with the fact like, okay, well, if unity is the point, we have so many other things too, right? We talked about that before. So yeah, gloss and clarity on just a lot of different things. There's just so much to go into that with, but we should keep going on points because we've got.
Wait, but before we move on, are
Yeah.
you meaning to go nuclear? Would you? Because hey, this isn't just my imaginary.
I've been
counsel. You
open
can
about
have-
that on Twitter very clearly. Like, I think Eastern rites belong in the East. I think they should be very well controlled. I think it's very strange when you've got Byzantine and whatever else going on in the United States and the West. The joke, I guess, is TLM supremacy, right? Like, that's kind of how it is in the West.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's how I've always felt. Unity means, you want Catholic, you want unity, then let's do that. And let's also go after some of this Eastern stuff that's going on. There's a lot of, I don't want to say nonsense, but I mean, it's just weird. It's confusing to people. You've got 4 people attending a parish down the street for their Eastern, I guess it's called Divine Liturgy. And then you've got the Catholic community. There's division. Well, that's more division than anything else.
Some of the other, and this is an important number one before we go on, and it's a good bridge to the Vatican II amendments. When we're talking about Pastor Aeternus giving some gloss, can the Pope abrogate ancient liturgical practices or not? We've seen instances of it in the church before. We're seeing instances where people who aren't radtrads like Cardinal Burke are saying, no, the Pope can't do this. The ultimate question, bosses saying, would be, can we do this? Can we abrogate even, did you hear the gasp? Even the Eastern rites. Now, I know people are going to be freaking out there, like tearing at their garments, but hear it out. And this is more your position than mine, though I'm inclined to agree heavily. It's like, look, if we answer this yes, Pastor Aeternus, paragraph 289 means what it says, and at Vatican III they reconsidered and they're like, no, his power over disciplines is plenary. Then then the next thing you consider is, okay, we're going to move on to what Vatican II did to the Roman rite, and we'll talk about that in a second. But with regard to all of the other 20 some odd rites, which are Eastern or
even the ordinary, don't leave them out because they feel safe right now. All my ordinary friends are just dunking on me left and right. I know. Like, how does that feel? It's like, yeah, no.
I know.
They'll come for you too. Don't feel safe.
So those are past. Okay, so this is my point, and I don't have a strong position yet on this, though. I think I incline toward your position. Those were pastoral negotiations. A lot of people don't know until they take my church history class on timothyjgordon.com beginning September the 1st, our new classes.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. Go to timothyjgordon.com, click and roll. A lot of people don't know that the reason we have the majority of the Eastern rites is literally at 1054 and shortly thereafter. in order to, when all of the Eastern Catholics were leaving with at the Great Schism, the church was like, no, to stanch the hemorrhaging of people. They're like, we'll let you keep your ancient liturgical practice if you stay in the church. That's why, what's called the Divine Liturgy, as celebrated by Greek Orthodox on Sunday, well, aside from the Filioque in the Apostles' Creed and mentioning the Pope as first man, it's Eastern Catholics, Greek Catholics are celebrating the exact same masses. It's an Orthodox mass, but they're allowed to celebrate it. And so it becomes a Catholic mass because they recognize those two things in the mass. They say the Pope's name and they say Filioque. Same thing with Coptic Christians. Well, they have the same liturgy as the Coptic Orthodox, except those two addenda, say the Pope's name and Filioque. A lot of people don't know that. Same thing with whatever, pick your East Syriac rite. Not all of them.
How many can you name in 30 seconds? Go. No,
of the 14 autocephalus, I forget.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the Russian church is a little different because they freaked out at the Union of Florence when we actually ended the Great Schism for like a week, and then they all freaked out.
Greatest week ever.
Yeah. But do you see the point? So that was like, okay, in 1054, 1,000 years ago, that was a pastoral need. Keep these people in the church. Arguably, we don't need it anymore. So if we come out at Vatican III, Pastor Eternus means exactly what it says. The Pope would have the plenary power to do that.
There were trads then, like you were saying, that were like, you can't be pastoral and walk with these guys, right?
Probably.
That's what that would mean, right?
Yeah.
Walking with them. It's like, okay, we can grant them certain things that are like kind of blessed and signed off as Catholic, like they did with like ordinariate and things. And we do that to bring them into the fold. The idea is that they come in then at that point to the fold, though, right?
Yep.
We want unification again. That's the whole point of being Catholic. So it's not a unique idea in history, and people are acting like it's kind of a unique thing, but we've always granted stuff like that.
Exactly. We've always done with discipline. The Pope has always been kind of the magister.
The difference was there wasn't Twitter. So like 4 dudes couldn't be like, what? This is outrageous. How dare you be pastoral this way and walk with them? Yeah. And now you can just be the loudest person on Twitter and you're right for some reason.
Right.
So
we have in the Catholic world the kind of transsexuals are what, 1 out of 500 or 1 out of 1,000. And in the Catholic world, this is the problem with edgelords.
That got heavy really quick.
They're 1 out of 500 or 1 out of 1,000, and they're the loud minority. And they, even though the other 600 out of 1,000 aren't transsexuals, they're like, well, I'm sympathetic to their point of view, and it creates real havoc. And it's created so much real havoc that I think we legit need Vatican III. It's just trannies in general, or you threw me for a loop there, because I got to throw this out there too. I was on Twitter earlier, and I saw somebody posted a meme, and it was Bruce Jenner and his daughter wearing the same dress. Oh, yeah, I saw
Did you see that? It was like when your dad wears the same dress as you.
It's so embarrassing when dad wears my dress. Yeah. What you wore it better? Who had the better cut?
Let's just like give another point or something, because it's so gross. Yeah, it's so gross.
Yeah. So the rest of the changes will be, or the things being addressed will be like Vatican II. But I think it's really, really, really important that people out there get the question is open. If the Pope doesn't have the power to do the disciplinary kind of prudential calls, because it's not dogma, it's not faith morals, then we've got to make that clear. Because as of right now, what the law that we have on the books, Pastor Eternus, looks like it's basically plenary power. If you're telling me it's not, Cardinal Burke, I'd just like to see chapter and verse where it's not. When you say, oh, it's in tradition somewhere floating around in the ether, it's like, and I'm not trying to use a disrespectful voice, I'm just trying to express that's not my voice.
Right.
Like, okay, but with a codified magisterium, we're always pointing at Islam and Protestantism and being like, this is why you need a codified magisterium, right? So you can't just say, well, it exists in tradition, the fact that the Pope's power is not absolute, and point at it, and then, but what is codified is this Vatican I document, and it seems to insinuate otherwise. Plus, we have all the historical instances of that. So you are just for the record, you are a Latin Rite supremacist.
Absolutely.
and you would or wouldn't get dual. I'm making you go nuclear. You would or wouldn't get rid of all of the other, because it's Catholic, right? Universal.
I would start with in the West. Yeah, absolutely. I would start with that. I'd be like, hey,
but do it all in one fell swoop. Go
well,
Roman.
That's how they did. But that's how they did Vatican II, right? It's just like they flipped the switch and that was it. It was like the Novus Ordo Mass was there. You could do the same thing. I would be more pastoral and walk with people and say, hey, we need to set a deadline. We need to figure this out and all come towards the sense of being Catholic with our liturgy even. And now we have a way to, like, everything's literally codified. We can all tell. And whether we're in, wherever we're at, okay, we can have a Catholic Mass that everyone understands and can participate in, because that's the participation that I think of, right? Is that we kind of just understand what's going on. We know what the meaning of the Mass is, that sort of thing, and not having people screeching because they're not part of the Schola, come taste and see. That's not the participation.
Yeah, like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like Evelyn Mois said, no need to shout about the Vatican II Mass. No need to shout. Only God knows who's participating, because it's prayer. It's not that you don't need to be the loudest warbler lady, at Mass where you're singing taste and see. As a matter of fact, don't sing taste and see, and don't even have the song. You don't need to be loudest warbler. That doesn't mean participation. It means who's paying the most attention when the priest has his back to us consecrating a host. Okay.
But to clarify, yes, absolutely throwing hate at all the Eastern rites.
Yeah,
Just get rid of them. Have one Western Roman rite, and that's it. Fall in line.
Eventually, that should be the goal, and that should be consistent with when we tell everyone, "Do you know what Catholic means?" It means universal. Yeah. And Latin is an otherwise dead language, so it just makes too much sense. I've always inclined this way. It's not a hard position of mine, but I do see the attractiveness of what you're saying. So I'm glad you're willing to commit to it.
It's such a dead language. We don't even issue church documents in it anymore.
Yeah. That's
Francis will publish in Spanish or Italian.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's like, I guess we'll have to wait for the official Latin translation when?
Right.
And I think he does. Somebody can correct me, but go online and see it. They probably eventually take a look and see. I think they go on and
look and see. Yeah. Okay. So point number 2. Now we're coming down to the Vatican II addresses that need to be had at eventual Vatican III. And I will say this one thing. You made the point about the Lateran councils. The first 4 ecumenical councils of the church took place within the space of 126 years. Now they're setting all that dogma, so it makes sense. But between, Ephesus and Nicaea, I mean, you're having that's 126 years. Whatever 4 is that 3 or 4? I forget. But the point is, you have one every, whatever that is, 27 years. And so it's not too soon, because Vatican II's fruits have been so fruity, right? That it's not too soon. Don't tell me it's too soon. People are like, well, sometimes it takes hundreds of years. That's true. But in this case, there's too much confusion from Vatican II and from Vatican I. And that's 150 years. So Sacrosanctum Concilium, which is, I would argue, forcefully, the organic change to the TLM when it's done right. When you go read Sacrosanctum Concilium, which is more Platonic, it's more general, it's not that specific. What Vatican III would need to do, this is issue number 2, they would need to, at the council itself, hammer out the missal and either vote up or vote down on the Sacrosanctum Concilium missal. Therefore, it's in continuity with Vatican II. And this is Vatican II Sacrosanctum Concilium, which is in continuity with the TLM, right? I would say have it mostly Latin Mass, liturgical ad orientem posture, go to, get rid of all the hymns, burn them and salt the earth, go only chant, Latin chant. And it's like, okay, let's just basically, if they need an aggiornamento, then go ahead and add 1 or 2 little organic things, sprinkle away. But do a Sacrosanctum Concilium missal at Vatican III. Don't wait for a concilium to do it later in conformity with the council. We never got that. We had this, chintzy missal for 50 years. It's a discipline. They brought it in. They tried it. It didn't work. It at least contributed toward everyone going away. I don't know if it was the whole cause, but it didn't work. It's an ugly missal. And as I pointed out a few times anyway, the Mass we just saw that we were balking at, that was at least 2 degrees of separation away from Sacrosanctum Concilium. Sacrosanctum Concilium, then the Missal of 69, and then the actual abysmal ways that even the not so good Missal of 69 is done. We tried it. now do a missal that will look like an organic, you know, kind of reimagining or whatever you want to call it of the TLM. And then we have perfect continuity. What do you think of that?
Well, the documents talks about how the priest has to realize the importance of the Mass in the first place. They were actually saying that. Let's like starting from square one, right? Of course, the priest has to know that, or else the people will never know that. So when you're reading through the document, it's like, oh, but a lot of the stuff I've seen, they can't even just read the black and do the red. They can't even do that, right? So yeah, of course, it's going to be way out of whack. Like you said, at least 2 degrees of separation when they can't follow simple instructions. So of course, we should have things hammered out very clearly, because anything that's left open to interpretation is just going to have way too much done to it. And in some cases, like we've said, when you read it, there isn't that much left to interpretation necessarily, but they've done it. And so absolutely, that has to be done. Much more clarity.
Yeah, but what do you, I mean, I don't know how recently you've read Sacrosanctum Concilium or if you've ever been all the way through it.
I haven't gotten all the way through it. No.
Arroyo said something 2 weeks ago, and I think he just did a reprise show this past Thursday. I was eagerly tuning in because it was such a great show, and it was just an encore presentation of the one from the week prior.
Mm-hmm.
So that last world over with Arroyo, he said it so perfectly. He's like, Sacrosanctum Concilium is, we never saw that, and that's a Vatican II work product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the Constitution that actually tells us what the will of the Holy Spirit was. Once it's everyone's names on the paper ratifying Sacrosanctum Concilium, all the bishops around the world, including Lefebvre, then it's like we never got a peek at that. We never got to see that, right? Like, I'd like to see it. That's all I'm saying. I'd like to see it in missal form. That is not what the 69 missal is.
Clearly not.
And that is not what we saw. We didn't even see the 69 missal today at Mass.
Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom. And Jesus said, Shalom. I'm not going to finish that joke, but yeah, our priest said Shalom when you're supposed to like slap a high five to your homie sitting next to you or whatever, just as Jesus did, right?
Yeah, that's how he opened up.
It's scriptural.
Shalom.
Yeah.
Shalom. Jesus was a Jew. Shalom.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm just getting verklempt thinking about it.
Verklempt.
That's all the Jewish terms I know.
You missed
so.
your joke on what are the fruits of Vatican II.
Yeah.
Who's one of the fruits of Vatican II, Tim?
Father James Martin.
We could, but when you
Father
said,
James Martin is one of the fruits of Vatican II.
But when you were talking about
his
the fruits,
ministry, let's say, is one of the fruits.
When you were talking about the fruits of Vatican II, I was like, we could get rid of the fruits of Vatican II and then keep the fruits that were supposed to come from Vatican II. It's confusing because it's the same word again, right? It's like the whole, anyways.
Get rid of the fruitiness.
Get rid of the fruitiness, which created the fruits. Mm-hmm. And then we could see the true fruits of Vatican II if it was implemented correctly. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I think you said that right. I think Hemingway wrote something like that about the fruits of Vatican II.
Less elegantly, but yeah, of course.
So I find that this, once I made the correction to myself after I saw Cardinal Burke, and I'm like, yeah, I was saying, organic versus inorganic change to the liturgy. This is really a distinction of degree dressed up as a distinction of kind. I was debating that with my buddy Joe, SSPX Joe. And then I saw Cardinal Burke speak, and I looked up something really quick, and I was like, no, he's right. He's more right than wrong, and I'm more wrong than right on that. So assuming that this isn't just some made up trad analogy, because it's not actually real. Organic means, carbon compound constitution. Assuming that it's a good analogy and I was wrong, I would say Sacrosanctum Concilium, the way they could do it, could basically be like a TLM with a couple minor changes that you'd say, okay, that's organic. I'm not saying it must be done that way. I'm saying Vatican III, you'd like to see it with just, organic growth into the Mass. And okay, they say the need for liturgical reform was real. Old ladies were just praying their rosary during Mass. I'll be honest, I don't do that when I go to a TLM, because I'm so engaged in just watching the priest and trying to be with him on his prayers. Right. I will be honest, I do that when I'm at Novus Ordo.
Absolutely.
Because I'm just praying for holiness. And it's like, Lord, forgive them. They know not what they do, is usually my prayer on the rosary. And people were saying, well, this is a need for liturgical reform. Okay, maybe people should all be We shouldn't be talking together, like you were saying. We should all be praying together. I get it, but I'm not gonna stop praying my beads during the Mass until we get rid of the Missal of Paul VI and we get the Sacrosanctum Concilium, the real Mass. It's the ultimate continuity. Okay, point number 3, Vatican III would need to address the ostensible tension, which always points us to the hermeneutic of continuity, not the contradiction represented by Dignitatis Humanae. There would need to be, I would say, some gloss put on the meaning of religious liberty. And I would say that there are two directions that this could go in, and just show, look, Vatican II, specifically Dignitatis Humanae, when we talk about whether religious liberty is a good thing or a thing at all, we ought to say these things. 1, we have to hard line distinguish positive from natural law. Okay, so positive law, in all the ways Thomas and Aristotle talk about, does not need to be a perfect reduplication of natural law. That means we're permitting a lot in the name of God-given free will, liberty. Liberty is that which God gave us, right? It's not that which failed us or whatever. It's that which God gave us. And once we make the distinction between positive and natural law, the only thing remaining to do to make religious liberty clear that there's a good type and a bad type is distinguish between confessional and secular states and say, if the conditions for the possibility of confessional states are met, they're always preferred under the church. That's been the bimillennial teaching. But after 1054 and 1517, basically all of the world is run by secular states, most of them being secular democracies or republics. And that's less than ideal, but it's permissible. And then 1200s or 1300s Catholic theory called two swords theory kicks in. And you just say, the best thing on this model of secular states with a distinction between positive and natural law is that two swords theory, the religious competence is out of the state. It's wholly the church. So we don't want a secular leader making the call about whether to be Eastern Orthodox or Catholic after 1054. We don't want a secular state making the call on whether to be Lutheran or Catholic, as even Charles V allowed at the Peace of Augsburg in 1555. So we don't even want that kind of competence, let alone all the many false religions that we snicker at, right? Which is all of them, aside from Christianity.
Every single one of them.
So we do it because of that. If we live in a secular state, if we don't live in a confessional state, then this is what Vatican II refers to as religious liberty. And it's in the tradition of Suarez and Bellarmine, who write about it more plentifully than even Dignitatis Humanae. And that's all we ever meant, Vatican II, as clarified by Vatican III. What would you say about that?
I've just never thought it's a difficult thing to understand that people are competent or make judgments where they're competent at. And so to me, I mean, I don't know how to say it other than it just makes sense, right? You can't really make judgments and pronouncements on things when you're not competent authority to do so. So things are tolerated in a sense. It's not a lot to add to that, really. There's just, it's fairly clear cut in the way that things were handled by the church.
I do think
I would like clarification though. Right. I do. Right. Obviously, of course. I don't think there's ever a problem when somebody asks for clarification or asks questions and wants them answered in a deeper way.
Right.
That's of course that should be something that we're always doing to better understand it. Of course.
I agree that Dignitatis Humanae is actually probably the clearest constitution of Vatican II, but I would say address it as Vatican III because of Canon 212, sections 2 and 3. So many of the Catholic faithful have expressed confusion. I'm with you. Mm-hmm. I don't think Dignitatis Humanae is not one of the problematic areas of the council documents, constitutions and declarations and decrees. Those are the 3 types of documents. I don't think it's one of the tricky ones, but the Sensus Fidelium has asked for it in accordance with Canon 212, sections 2 and 3. So give it to them. Just be like, mm-hmm. This is what we meant. This is what Suarez and Bellarmine were talking about. And one of the medieval popes were talking about it. Even Gregory the Great, when he's saying, convert Jews through sweetness of preaching. It's not part of our faith. A natural extension of that is after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, sometime between 1054 and 1517, the Great Schism and the Great Revolt by Luther and the Protestants, you have a fact. You have a brute fact. Europe is not just some basically Catholic empire.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden the secular state has to choose between Eastern Orthodox and Catholic after 1054. Then it has more choices in Western Europe, between Catholic and Lutheran. And even, like I say, go look it up. Even Charles V, with no complaints by Pope Pius V. Emperor Charles V, one of the last great Holy Roman emperors, signed the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, allowing the prince to decide area by area, prince by prince, between Lutheranism and Catholicism. Boom. That's what we mean by religious liberty. That doesn't mean that a confessional state is not ideal. It just means that there are less than ideals that are even more than tolerated. Secular states are the way. They're going to be the way for the foreseeable future. In secular states, what did you say? You don't rule on an area of incompetence. That leads to suffering, needless suffering.
Absolutely. I mean, we can all agree that the governments are involved in things that pushing agendas and things that they shouldn't be. We all agree with that. So that's what we're saying is call it fair for both sides then, right? Just stay out of those areas you're not competent in. Don't even touch that and stay where you're supposed to be at. And then, the argument has never been that your faith shouldn't inform your decision making or how you live. That's never been the case, right? And then, of course, that's what we get accused of right away as soon as you say that. Make the calls where you're competent. Your faith always has to inform what you do, whether you're a politician or you're scrubbing toilets. It doesn't matter what it is. So that's the next argument that gets brought out, and that's just a false argument against it.
Yeah, like comet versus scrubbing duck or whatever it's
yeah,
called.
Exactly.
Like, say.
But I do want to say, you said there's no complaint, right? When Charles V, you were talking about that. There was with no complaint, but there was 10 dudes. That were out circulating letters in town that were like, "This is outrageous, bro! Like we gotta organize." And everybody else was like, "Yeah, be quiet."
None of them on Twitter today. That's what I'm saying. They're like Holy Roman Empire's based. Yeah, Charles V is cool. He's cool. But most of these historically illiterate people on Twitter that converted to the faith 9 months ago and have never taken a church history class, or not a good one anyway. They literally don't understand. Look it up. People, look it up. Peace of Augsburg, 1555. Charles V promulgated it under Pope Pius V. Chad Pope Pius V. The Peace of Augsburg allowing, even in the dying Holy Roman Empire, it was fast dying because Protestantism was spreading like metastasizing cancer.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, you pick. And they'd had two, and it wasn't a rash decision. They had the first Diet of Spire, the second Diet of Spire. They're going back and forth on whether or not to do this in like 1527, then 1529. Mm-hmm. Then boom, 1555, the Peace of Augsburg. And it's not a word of complaint from Pius V. Charles V is like, look, I don't want to deal with it. It's out of my competence, and I'm going to literally let some European princes say, my region is Lutheran. Others will say mine is Catholic. That was a Holy Roman Empire under Pius V. That's wild. So if they can do that, which is much closer to a confessional state, then we definitely can have the negative implied by the doctrine of two swords theory when we're in a totally secular state, and totally secular states are licit. That doesn't mean they're the ideal, but they're licit. Okay, so if all of this is true at our wish list for Vatican III, then it leads naturally to a question that's repeated in Dignitatis Humanae, and it's taken up again in one of the other, I think it's a decree. I don't think it's a constitution or a declaration. Nostra Aetete. And here's what I would like Vatican III to do. It's really simple. I do it whenever I debate atheists. I haven't done a debate against atheists anymore, but I always open up with this. Explain the freaking difference in modern terms, 21st century terms, between monotheism and polytheism. There are 3 monotheisms in the history of the world. That does not include Zoroastrians. Sorry, Zarathustra.
What?
That doesn't, they always say, oh, the atheists like saying that that's a monotheism. It's not a monotheism. It's like a duotheism. But the point is, they're all the Abrahamic
It
faiths.
sounds lame.
Sounds gay.
It sounds super lame and gay.
But okay, it's the Abrahamic faiths, and that's Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Those are the three monotheisms in the history of the world. All of them more or less perfectly trace the roots of their faith back to Father Abraham, either to Isaac or Ishmael, his bastard son Ishmael. That's Islam. And it has many, many demonic manifestations, but it is a monotheism. And Christianity has recognized it throughout the Dark Ages, the early part of the Middle Ages, late Middle Ages, the Enlightenment, and currently. And they're just like, yes, these monotheists worship the one true God. That comes directly from Pius X's Catechism. There's a medieval pope from the 1400s that acknowledge it. Bellarmine and Suarez again acknowledge this is not new teaching, calling these fellow monotheists, Muslims. Now, it's a particularly, I think, demonic manifestation of the third monotheism, but it is the third Abrahamic faith. Christianity has held this for this long, but it's fine for us to, as Ed Feser distinguishes between sense and reference, say, look, they have the one right concept with all wrong attribution. That's the dichotomy between sense and reference. And clarify what makes all of these rad treads mad about Nostra Aetate. Just say, this is what we meant. And it's pretty clear they meant it all along to me. But again, I don't mind. I think the church should be a loving mother and clarify questions to its sincere quibblers, right? With things like Dignitatis Humanae and Nostra Aetate. But then there's a more important distinction that should be made. I think Taylor Marshall had a problem with calling Islam one true God, one true God.
That was a big sticking point.
But that was in Pius X's Catechism himself. Suarez says it. Bellarmine says it. A medieval pope in the 14th century says it.
On Twitter, though, people would say you're the one that made that up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it's like, no, that's a Tim Gordon thing. That's like, you totally made that up.
Yeah, you show it to them and they're like, no, you still made it up. No, you had that falsely printed out.
Twitter's a hell of a drug.
It is.
It's a hell of a drug.
It is. It's psychotropic. But then there's an important thing with polytheism, because in Nostra Aetate, another big sticking point with the rad trads is that that there are places in Nostra Aetate where it does say these polytheists, wacky religions, babyish, wacky spins on, the definition of God is that he must be one, he must be, all powerful, all scientific, he must know everything, he must be in all spaces at once. And polytheists just struggle with this. And that's the majority of the world's 10,000 religions, 15,000 religions. This is all of them but three. And I think it's a reference to the Buddhists in Nostra Aetate, or there's a passing reference in Dignitatis that just says they believe they can reach nirvana. Well, they're wrong. Just say they're wrong. I mean, just have a passage. Yeah. It was implied in Nostra Aetate that they're wrong, but maybe make it a little more explicit for some of the people that, the Huck Finns out there that need perfect literality, need perfect explicitude in all of these ecumenical documents. And I have no problem with that. Just say, look, all the polytheisms of the world are definitionally wrong.
Yeah, just condemn them outright in a very clear way. That's not so, this, it's like, just use plain language. Just do it the way that it should be done.
Yeah, do it the way it should be done.
Yeah.
And then just say, but they're tolerated because of what we said in point 3, Vatican 3.3, right?
Wait, so you're
religious
saying
liberty.
The equivalent on Twitter is a retweet isn't an endorsement, basically, right?
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
That's what it is. I mean, it's again, I don't understand. And maybe somebody can sit me down and explain to me why this is so hard for them to get. It's not live and let live in the sense that like we're totally cool with it. It's just that we have to tolerate certain things. We can't just go around forming our own militias and smoking people out. I mean, that's really not what we're supposed to be doing about stuff like that.
Well, maybe we could put it into terms like Bishop Barron talking to Ben Shapiro. Let me use this seriously. What did we all want for Bishop Barron to do to Ben Shapiro? We didn't want him to I mean, I'm not even going to say it. Right? We didn't want him to do something.
Some people
violent.
on Twitter probably did.
Yeah.
Seriously, the raddest of the trads wanted that.
Edgelords.
Like, the Edgelords were like, burn him alive on the yeah.
Right. Okay. But that's not what
That's
we want.
not what we're saying.
That's not what the church wants. But that's true. Actually.
There are people that want that. Don't mix words. There are people that want that. They're like, that'd be based, bro. That'd be so based. And then do it on like Gab because we can't do it on Twitter anymore or whatever.
Right. Notwithstanding, Gregory the Great literally said this about Jews in the 400s. He said, you convert them not through force, but through sweetness of preaching. It's a very famous thing. So all we really wanted and all the church has timelessly taught in its bimillennial tradition is with regard to the Jews is speak clearly to them. Mm-hmm. Speak clearly about, and we live in a secular society. There's a distinction between positive and natural law. So we've always wanted you guys to convert through sweetness of preaching and through your openness of heart. But if you don't, we will coexist with you peaceably, as Gregory the Great once taught. But we pray for you to get the faith. And then if Ben Shapiro follows up with a quickly worded little question like, well, but what does that mean for you? Well, here's what we mean. Let me consult, Lumen Gentium paragraph 14, which says 5 different times in 5 different ways you need the church.
Right.
You need the church for salvation. You're not in the church. So you do the math. Pope, that's what we wish Bishop Barron would have said as a combination of points 3 and 4 here. And just say, look, monotheists, you're halfway there. You are, if we distinguish between sense and reference, you do have some idea about the one true God.
Right. But
Jews, you got to get over what happened between the Old Testament and the New Testament and convert them through sweetness of preaching. And Muslims is a whole longer conversation.
Yeah,
you guys have to, there's a lot. There's so much. That's a whole couple shows. But there's more that you guys have to do. But both of you, Muslims and Jews, you got to become Christian. Just as we say to Protestants, you got to be Christian, but you got to have bishops in the church and sacraments, right? It's a distinction of degree there. And anyway, so there's a difference between monotheism and polytheism. We should distinguish that in Nostra Aetate, and I've always been clear with it. Thomas Pink made Dignitatis really clear for me. But in points 3 and 4 here in Vatican III, I say be a loving mother church and give clarification to the kids that have a harder time reading these with a hermeneutic of continuity. I don't know why it's so hard, but who cares? You give to the people that are asking. When your kids ask you for a fish, don't give them a stone. The 5th point, I don't know how much there is to say, but this is a legitimate issue I have with Vatican II. It's a footnote that Mary was supposed to be promulgated as co-redemptrix. Many of the conservatives, the faithfuls at Vatican II, had planned to announce this. It was planned before John the 23rd, I think, changed the rubrics. And they address it in one of the sessions. They say, we're not going to do this because this would alienate further our separated brethren. That's obviously really bad.
Yeah, and Pope Francis, just his spider sense is tingling right now because he's actually spoken out a couple of times on that himself personally, I think, where he just kind of said it's nonsense, actually.
What? Oh, the code.
Yeah, he just basically tried to shut the door as hard as he could on it without issuing an official document.
That's right.
And I'm open to correction on that because I don't want to be right about that he did that. But I remember a couple of times that I think he's specifically addressed that. Maybe he was just flying on a plane somewhere, just doing an awesome press conference like normal. Just like angry dad. But yeah, I remember that specifically. He just kind of tried to slam the door shut. I'll look that up. I mean, hopefully everybody else can do it.
I remember one of those.
And if I'm wrong, correct me, because I don't ever want to speak incorrectly about the Holy Father, obviously.
Yeah, you do.
But yeah, it's all I do. It's all I do. No, but it's crazy because it was never something that was probably fought about or seen as weird or, hey, it's just like we need to codify this like we've done with so many other things that have been around since time immemorial with the church, basically, right? In perpetuity, if I could speak correctly. And so just to say, well, we're just going to wait because we don't want to alienate people. That's where I'm like with the rad trads in the sense, like just proclaim what we proclaim and do it unabashedly, because if that's the thing that's going to keep them out, there's a lot more to be worried about than just that.
Yeah.
So that was very kind of weird that was just, like you said in a footnote, just kind of like, oh yeah.
Well, that's real. You can go look that up.
Absolutely.
Unlike all the other many of the other complaints about the Vatican II documents, you go look it up and you're like, oh, you're misquoting it, or it's not there.
Right.
But this is more like complaints about Pope Francis. You go look it up, you're like, this is really obnoxious, and it's even a little worse than what the rad trads are for. So of course we're all with the rad trads on that one.
Yeah.
The co-redemptrix thing is extremely compelling, and the Vatican III should clarify that as point number 5. Now, point number 6, we probably don't have to belabor this much. But given that I wanted not just Sacrosanctum Concilium to be reaffirmed, a TLM kind of organic change, Sacrosanctum Concilium does that the way I read it. I would like a missal promulgated at the council that they vote up or down at the council. And I'd like disciplinary anathemas for all who refuse. Anyone that tries to do the fruitcake mass we just came from, anyone who refuses to do the Vatican II Sacrosanctum Concilium missal, right? I would say make it really clear. Don't have any of the wackiness, whether or not this party is allowed to demur, or that party is allowed not to do it, or they're in partial communion, any of that. Just say, look, any parties in Germany that want to do a fruitcake, beer, and pizza mass, you're out. You're out.
That's just a pizza party. That's not mass.
Yeah.
Do that outside of mass.
Do it after mass.
How hard is that? Yeah.
But if you demur, then you're out. And same thing for people on the right. We need clarity now. Yeah. Listen, jokes aside, after the motu proprio, what we need is clarity. We need Vatican I cleaned up, no contradiction, just the tensions relieved. We need the Vatican II tensions relieved. Vatican III would be it could be done. It could be done through the will of God. But you have to be really clear, and you have to be like, this is the way forward. We're a strong leader, a strong pope who's faithful and with God listens to the sensus fidelium, like I was saying in points 3 and 4. Like, look, they want dignitatis and nostra aetete a little bit glossed. Give that to them, right? Even if you could say it's kind of obvious. Still, just give that to them and clarify, clean it up a little bit. But then in other areas, like I'd say with discipline, because discipline is so fudgeable, say, like Pope Victor, you are excommunicated if you do this mass to the left or to the right of what we're saying, at least in the Latin Rite. And then you get this, Latin Rite supremacist wanting to put, I mean, maybe even you go the whole world. That's how we can be Catholic. That's how one of the two of these high mass, or not high mass, low mass, extraordinary, ordinary form of the Latin Rite had to die out. It's like Harry Potter and the Dark Lord Voldemort. I know a bunch of my trad fans will love that analogy.
Harry Potter.
Both cannot live, together. One has to win out. So that's just how it has to be. And I would say that reifying Sacrosanctum Concilium's missal would very strongly, it would be a nod to TLM is winning out, but we're giving, a little bit more scripture in the readings. Fine. So that's a little bit of a giornamento, but it's mainly a nod to the TLM. If you go read Sacrosanctum Concilium, I think this is how you heal the church. And it also means you're not overlooking Vatican II. You're not overlooking Vatican I, undoing either of them. Yeah. You preserve the integrity of the church. You give basically reasonable trads like us everything that trads want, that reasonable trads could want, and you show everyone the hermeneutic of continuity is not just for Vatican II, it's for all time, including Vatican I, and I think everyone wins. Now, having said that, it's not going to happen, but
people are going to fight about it for hundreds of years later, and it won't. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to be how it always has been. That was my opinion at breakfast, kind of, remember?
Yeah,
I actually just said I don't think we're anywhere near through what we've been in and what's coming. I think that we're
suffering.
Yeah, suffering wise, I think we're going to see a lot worse. I think there's going to be more confusion. I hope everything I'm saying is wrong, but that's just what I feel is coming. I think that we're still going to be suffering to try to right the ship.
Oh, and I agree with that. And that comes from a conversation you and I had like a week before. We kind of I don't think Vatican III is going to happen. I'm just saying you could do Vatican III, or it wouldn't be undoing one or two.
Right.
It would show there's continuity. Absolutely. And it would show, hey, we're listening to the sensus fidelium, but none of these things were wrong or errant, authentic, ordinary, or extraordinary parts of the message. I was just saying you could do it. But I do agree with you. Look, people, parish orphans of retrogrades.
Strap in.
I love you guys. Strap in. The the freaking Christians of the first 300 years before the Edict of Milan under Constantine, they literally had 300 years of suffering death if you were found out to be a Christian. Right. They had nothing. They had no dogma announced yet. The doctrine was all just word of mouth, capital T tradition. The masses were all basically disciplinary, capital T tradition, or I guess lowercase t tradition. And they were suffering, and they were suffering. So if they could deal with that for 300 years, Providence might well have us dealing with much lower level suffering, a tacky mass, where you still get the Eucharist for 600 years. But I'm hoping by the will of God that maybe those of us who have already suffered enough can be over it. And, you know, we'll just see. We'll see how it plays out. But at any rate, don't leave like an edgelord Eastern Orthodox. Don't do that.
No.
Yeah.
No edgelords allowed.
No.
Stay in the ship.
Stay on the bark. Don't fall off to the left side or the right side. I don't talk like this politically, right? But politically, I'm as far right wing as you go. You know, close the borders, you know, prosecute all who have anything to do with abortion, you know, robust states' rights. That's as far right as you go. But in the church, the theology is all Thomistic, but we need to keep people 100% on the bark. That's the point. Now, here's how you can help yourself to do that. We're opening up a class, a series of classes for homeschoolers in September at timothyjgordon.com. Go click enroll. You need to be homeschooling your kid if at all possible, because Catholic schools are not trustworthy. I'm not going to address public schools because that insults your intelligence, right? Homeschool your kids. If you're scared to do so, we'll help you with things like Latin 1, Algebra 1 that intimidate a lot of homeschool parents. Number 2, get out of blue states. Get to red states like Mississippi or Alabama or I guess Georgia. You know, it's kind of purpley. Go to realestateforlife.org. Do like I did. Get from the blue to the red.
Purpley.
Get from the blue or the purple to the red.
Or the purple to the red. People, be honest with yourselves. If you think your state is like super based in red, it might be, it might not be, it might be purple, and just realize that. Don't be foolish. There's no reason to try to hang on and to save that. Just get out while you can.
Well, we were waiting. We were like in a 55-minute wait with our families outside of the Cracker Barrel with the other crackers. And we were literally like looking at Twitter and just laughing together. And this excuse that some conservatives are making for staying in their blue state, it's getting a little irritating.
Just
they say,
hang on, we'll change it.
Stay and fight.
Just
it's
hang
like,
on.
Wait. If you say stay and fight to me in a blue state, tell me how many fights you've been in. Like, who have you fought? And they're like,
and one if you have.
Yeah.
Right. And come out on top and change the state or whatever.
That's right. You got it. You and your homies took on BLM. Or Antifa. Okay, cool. If you won that fight
and ran them out of the state, and they're gone,
right? And they're gone. Then cool. Then I will shut my mouth. Yeah. But if you haven't done that, if you're just a normal kind of suburban guy, then you just need what did you call it? A
tactical retreat. Yeah, that's not a retreat in the sense people think of.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of ways you can read about it online. A tactical retreat is the smartest thing you can do sometimes.
It's around
not admitting
friends.
Defeat. Yeah, it's get around your friends, come up with a plan, and go forward. Don't just be out there to be slaughtered for no reason.
Right.
That's craziness to just die for no reason.
And be like, well, I'm going down fighting. It's like you're just eating dinner around a bunch of pagans every night. Yeah. You're not fighting. So go to realestateforlife.org
so based,
and they'll help you. So based to just stay and fight.
Did you see me get beat up by everybody?
Did you see my tax rate? It's through the roof. I'm giving money to Planned Parenthood. It's awesome. I mean,
so based. We're gonna win this stuff.
And finally, thank your good parish priest, or whether he be in Norbertine or FSSP or ICKSP, thank them for the good work you're doing. If you have one of the bishops that's retained the Latin, at least for now, thank them.
Yes.
I mean, they really should be. They did what they should have done, but thank them. And just hang on, buckle up, hang tight.
Buckle up, buckaroos.
Because you get ready for the suffering. It's coming on. Vatican III should look like this, though. Yeah, this is what it should look like. God bless you guys. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy your families. Hold them tight. And I guess this counts as an in, not of episode number